Hey, what's up guys? We're keeping it real estate, talking today about mortgage interest rates. How is it affecting our real estate market? How is it affecting buyers, sellers, realtors, all the people involved in real estate? It's an important topic, and that's what we're getting into today.
I keep it real, I keep it real, I keep it real, just keep it real.
Hey guys, it's Sam Hartman, your trusted real estate advisor, and today we're talking mortgage rates. A lot of fear and uncertainty going on in the real estate market, especially with buyers right now with rising interest rates. And so fear and uncertainty is often a result of not enough knowledge, context, data, information. And so that's what we're here to do today, is to try to give you guys as consumers the information, the context that you need to feel clear on your decisions and to be empowered to make the best real estate decisions possible for you and your family. So that's what we're talking about. Let's dive right in. Where are interest rates right now? And let's talk a little quote from Freddie Mac about what's happening with those interest rates. So from Freddie Mac, the 30-year fixed rate is 4.42%, 15-year fixed rate 3.63%, and the 5-year ARM 3.36%. And so the chief economist from Freddie Mac comes out saying, rising inflation, escalating geopolitical uncertainty, and the Federal Reserve's actions are driving rates higher and weakening consumers' purchasing power. And so that's the biggest concern. That's where the fear comes from, is how are buyers' purchasing power being affected? And I'll fill you in a little bit on this just kind of rule of thumb in real estate. It's called the 10-1 rule. The 110 rule. And that means every 1% change in interest rate affects a buyer's purchasing power by about 10%. So let's say you are pre-approved for a $300,000 home with an interest rate of 3%. So your payment would be X for that. But now the interest rate moves from 3% to 4%. To keep that same mortgage payment, you would only be able to afford 10% less, which would be a $270,000 house. So that is just a quick rule of thumb example about how these changing interest rates are affecting buyers' affordability, are affecting potential, the ability for buyers to afford the house that they want in this market. And so that's where we are sitting today with interest rates. But let's look back to just where did we start this year at, and kind of the rapid run up of these interest rates. And so at the end of 2021, starting 2022, interest rates were about 3.1%. Historically phenomenal interest rate. And it has been this kind of steady ramp up in the first quarter all the way up to that 4.42%. So it feels pretty drastic because it's happened so quickly, just over a 3-month time frame, that it's kind of made this rise. But ultimately, in the grand scheme of historic interest rates, it's at 4.42 is still a pretty phenomenal interest rate, and we're going to look at some more data about why that is. But real quick, before we look at that, we're going to jump into another quote from Freddie Mac. And that says that mortgage rates are likely to continue to move higher throughout the balance of 2022, although the pace of rate increase is likely to moderate. So they're saying here that the rates are going to continue to rise throughout 2022, but probably not rise as quickly as they did in the start of the year, just over these last 3 months. Here's why. Much of the increase in rates in early 2022 is in anticipation of what will happen later this year, especially with Federal Reserve interest rate policy. So what they're saying is so much of this rate increase has been anticipation of things that are going to happen. So the things that were kind of announced and talked about and discussed had not happened, but the rates still kind of ramp up and they kind of react reactionarily, which they shouldn't, but they do. Just like gas prices. Gas prices. You hear about a news story that's going to affect gas prices, but it affects them today, not when the actual effect happens. So it's kind of like that here with the mortgage rates. Is so much of this has been reactionary And so because of that, a lot of the major hit to interest rates has already happened. So we don't expect the rates to rise as quickly throughout 2022, but we don't expect them to come down either. We're still expecting just kind of a steady growth in those interest rates throughout the rest of the year. So let's talk about this, what feels like a drastic change in the interest rates, over 1% change in a very short amount of time. And so I've got some great information that looks at the last 6 real estate market eras where the interest rates actually increased 1 or more percent within a given time frame window. And those windows range from 8 months to 19 months. But it gives us a snapshot of what was happening in those markets, what the effects were in those markets, and maybe what we might be able to expect out of our market currently going forward as we make this change and see the effects of these rapidly increasing mortgage rates. And so here's that chart there, and you can kind of see these different eras, how the interest rates have increased, starting back in October of 1993 all the way back to December of 2013 were kind of where these eras ranged from. And so one of the first things my concern is, and I think a lot of home sellers' concerns are, is what happens to home price appreciation or depreciation because of market dynamics like increasing mortgage rates. And you can see here over all 6 of these periods, home prices during these periods remained appreciative, steadily growing, and on average during these eras appreciated by 8% on average over these last 6 eras. So the home seller can kind of rest easy. Your home value is not going away. We don't anticipate home price depreciation in any way. And this is just great historical context that shows even in these other markets where the mortgage rate increased drastically and quickly, home prices still are steady and continue to appreciate. And that's just one of many reasons home ownership is such a steady investment, historically speaking. Now let's add another market dynamic to this, and this is maybe more interesting for the realtors out there that might be following along, and that is what happens to home sales during periods like this. And so there is a little bit more red going on in these types of directions where home sales are actually decreasing during these typical eras where interest rates are increasing quickly. So this kind of makes sense. Maybe the buyer pool is being shrunken some because not as many buyers can afford the mortgage or the house that they were hoping to afford. So they're not buying up as much of the inventory of homes that's out there. So maybe buyers can take this as good news that maybe you're not going to have 10 offers on a house that you're fighting for. Maybe it's only 5 offers. Isn't that good news? Yay. So that's potentially, the good news there for buyers as a whole. But there are still market dynamics happening that I think makes our current market much different. And we are going to even talk more about those. One of the things I do want to point out here is I want to look at the interest rates throughout these eras. And so ranging on the high end of 9.2% to the low end of 4.46%, on average, these interest rates over these periods are 7.22%. And so if we look at the historicness of where we're at sitting under 4.5%, historically speaking, it's still a phenomenal interest rate. And so I think we've been a little bit spoiled with interest rates being, around in the 3%, even for a small short while in the 2%. And so buyers are, frustrated with this market and they feel like they're getting kicked while they're down with interest rates increasing. But ultimately, paying a 4.5% interest rate for your mortgage is a small price to pay when you're paying 100% interest rate on your rent. And so that's something to consider as you are still maybe considering whether you're in or out of the home buying market or whether you should get into the home buying market. That's the type of context I want you to consider. Don't just look back the last 3, 4, 5 months of what's happened and feel bad for yourself. Look over the history of home buying. Think about your parents that paid 18% for their first home on a mortgage. It's just crazy. So, historically speaking, stay positive, stay optimistic that 4.5% interest rate is still a phenomenal interest rate. And then what I want to close on is just how the market dynamics are during these different periods. And one of the biggest ways I'm looking and measuring a market dynamic is I'm looking at the inventory of homes for sale. And so we don't have all of the data for these last 6 periods, but the last 3 periods averaged 4.8 months supply of homes available for sale on the market. So from our perspective, what we consider a balanced real estate market would be a 6-month supply of homes. Anything less than that would skew towards a seller's market. Anything more than that would skew towards a buyer's market. So even back in these periods, I would say that the market was leaning more towards a seller's market. But here with these periods averaging 4.8 months supply of homes, right now, here today in Allen County, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in our Northeast Indiana real estate market, we have 0.5 months supply of homes. And so this is one of the biggest reasons why our market continues to be rated as one of the hottest real estate markets in the nation. Our market is actually growing at a substantially rate higher than the national average. So our market is growing. People are being attracted to our market, and that's a good thing. But it is what is partly putting a strain for buyers in our real estate market. The high level of demand for houses in this market is just unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of our local market. And so that is one of the biggest market dynamics that is really affecting buyers and what they're able to accomplish in the real estate market. It's what's caused, a 16% appreciation in our market in 2021. And so we'll continue to monitor that, but until that balance of inventory of homes starts to rise and starts to become more of a balanced market, I expect what's been happening in our market, the current market dynamics of high demand, low supply, and quick sales and increasing price appreciation for homes to continue in our real estate market. And let's close with a quote from the Director of Forecasting from the National Association of Realtors. While higher short-term interest rates will push up mortgage rates, I expect some of this impact to be mitigated eventually through lower inflation. Thus, I expect the 30-year fixed mortgage rate to continue to rise, although we aren't likely to see the big jumps that occurred over the past few weeks. So what she's saying there is that as inflation will hopefully calm down and the inflationary pricing with everything else in the world will slow down, that will help buyers' affordability again start to catch up, and buyers again maybe insert themselves back into the real estate market where they feel more stable, more comfortable about the decisions that they're hoping to make. Now guys, I totally understand that there is a lot of kind of madness, quick moving pieces that are happening in our real estate world, but the last thing I want is for you to feel unsure, insecure, uninformed to make the best decision that you need to make. And so that's what these videos are about. I'm just trying to empower you guys to make great real estate decisions for you and your family. If there's anything, any questions, any left out information that you need more details about, don't hesitate to reach out to me on any of my channels, on my website, keepingitrealestate260.com. I'm here for you, and I want you guys to make the best real estate decision possible.